Diving back into the book, taking shape to completely certain I am that any script, and I mean any gathering of words on a page, would have been better than what they did in 1989 with Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. And I'm telling you right now, you will never believe what they almost got away with here. The resounding success of Michael Myers' return to not only Haddonfield but Halloween in 1988 lit a fire under the asses of everybody who stood to profit from a quick turnaround on another film in the cinemas. Now, I can't imagine that putting a film together in one calendar year time would be an easy thing to do, but I was willing to take that journey if they were willing to put in the work, and the cast was willing to be there because they all signed on for a return to Haddonfield, which was a major plus, step in the right direction. The creative force behind Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, director Dwight Little, said he had done all that he had to do with the sequel and would not be returning to the franchise. And I get his point of view. He had a tough task in bringing Michael back in a big way after what they did with Season of the Witch, and he can really walk away with his head held high, because he knocked one out of the park for Halloween 4 as far as I'm concerned. Now, back when they were trying to flesh out something for Halloween 4, there was a fellow named Shim Bitterman who had made some noise, had a treatment. It had a little bit of support behind the scenes. There were a few people that really liked what he did. He only did it in 7 days, but he still put something out there that made them think. And they wound up going back to him, they being the decision makers. I'm assuming Mustafa Akkad was the main one, went back to him for a treatment that Shem called Halloween 5, The Killer in Me. Now, it only took him 3 days to come up with this script or this treatment, and it makes you wonder just what they were able to produce in such a short amount of time. Something they weren't all too thrilled about, though, was having to work around how things were left off in Halloween 4. And we all remember that amazing ending with Jamie at the top of a set of stairs after attacking her foster mother with scissors in a clown costume, looking down at Loomis, who is in a panic. Just very upset at what he's seeing. He thinks it's Michael all over again, raises his gun to try to shoot her. Meeker pulls his arm down so he doesn't shoot her. Awesome stuff. It's a cliffhanger of a way to end a horror movie. You didn't get endings like that very often in horror films, and I thought it was killer. The follow-up was crucial, though. Mustafa Akkad, though, he has always, to his credit, always been very protective over Michael Myers. And he didn't want a situation where Jamie was going to be replacing Michael. It didn't make any sense to him, and he just wasn't going to let it go through. Because at the end of the day, that's the guy that makes all the calls. That's the guy who decides if it's greenlit or if it's buried in a shelf somewhere. To Akkad, Jamie needed to be that sympathetic lead again, and Michael needed to be resurrected one more time. So they pick this version of 5 immediately up where 4 left off. Mrs. Carruthers is being treated for her wounds, her stab wounds, still alive, but she's being treated by first responders. Mr. Carruthers is screaming at Jamie, denouncing her as his daughter. Rachel has already just been through a ton. Keep in mind, this is a continuation of Halloween 4's night. Rachel's out of it, but she winds up getting in an ambulance and going to the hospital with her mother, and there is a bitch of a woman left behind to watch Jamie. I don't know the logistics of that whole thing. I think the cops would be involved, but there's a woman that stays back. Maybe she's a policewoman. They don't exactly tell us in the book. They don't explain it in the script, but she stays behind and watches Jamie. Now, ultimately, this woman winds up wrestling the scissors away from Jamie, and think about Jamie at this point. She's got to be terrified. Whatever happened, Jamie is in a bad spot right now, and she has a vision in this script of knives bursting through the chest of this woman. Jamie screams, which brings Loomis and Meeker upstairs to find this woman stabbed to death, laying on the floor, and Jamie's gone. Now, the Loomis we wind up getting because of this is even crazier than the one we ultimately get in the real Halloween 5, because he takes this latest murder as proof to Meeker. He explains to Meeker that Jamie is evil, has to be destroyed. There's no getting around it. We can't let this evil live the same way we let the other evil live in Michael. Now, Jamie splits, takes refuge in a church that's a few streets down, and this is where she encounters in the script what she says is an evil version of her, a vision that's evil, and tells her that she wants to kill. She has to kill. She knows what she needs to do. And in the meantime, Haddonfield is having a full-blown manhunt in order to find this little girl, with Meeker giving strict instructions to bring her in unharmed. This, of course, does not sit well with Loomis at all. And once Mrs. Carruthers is stable enough in the hospital, Rachel makes her way back to her house, where she finds Lindsay Wallace scrubbing blood out of the bathtub. And reading this, I was really glad to have Lindsay back for, any amount of time, because if anybody was good enough to watch my Saving a Serial Killer Halloween 5 edition, any script that keeps Rachel around for the bulk of the film would have been instantly greenlit by me. Just a no-brainer. But also having Lindsay back is a great idea too. I think, legacy character, and there's more for her to do, especially when they actually had her in Halloween 4. She wasn't credited as Lindsay Wallace from the original movie, but that's who she was meant to be. That is when Jamie winds up coming home and tearfully explains to Rachel and Lindsay that wasn't her that attacked Mrs. Carruthers, and it wasn't her that killed that other lady either. Rachel is not sure what to believe at this point. She's had a hell of a night. She protected Jamie through the entirety of Halloween 4, though, so she keeps doing what she knows how to do and looks after her just to make sure that this wasn't Michael Myers again. So she leaves Jamie with Lindsay. Big leap of faith. And if I was Lindsay, I'd be terrified at this point. But she leaves Jamie with Lindsay and then goes to see if Michael Myers is actually dead. And in the event that he isn't, because, Mikey's stubborn that way. He doesn't die when he's supposed to die. That could maybe prove that Jamie is innocent of all this. And this is where that old adage of being careful what you wish for comes into play. Because she finds her bad guy, gets chased through the woods by her bad guy, winds up stumbling upon a Halloween party out at a farm where she asks a guy named Tom for a ride back into Haddonfield. An ode, maybe, to the Tower Farm party in the version we got. Pretty sure that's what they were going for here. Oh, and along the way, Michael snaps the neck of a wolf that attacks him while he pursues Rachel. So that's a pretty badass thing for the Shape to do. I'm glad that they carried on that lineage of Michael just hating pets. Back at the Carruthers house, Jamie is kind enough to warn Lindsay that he's coming because she can sense her uncle, and her uncle can sense her, and the Shape bursts through the front door, winds up killing Lindsay, and then abducts Jamie, which I thought was kind of odd that he kidnapped her, but maybe we're going to a very weird place. Spoiler alert, we are. And we sat through the Thorn trilogy, so we're game for anything at this point. Rachel and this Tom character happen to arrive at the house just in time to see the abduction and follow Michael to Michael's childhood home, where a 3-on-1 battle ensues. Or a 3-on-1 as much as you can have that with a child and a 115-pound hottie helping out. It's not really a 3-on-1 battle. Loomis gets there, though, just as Michael vanishes, and he vows to keep Jamie safe. And keep in mind, the only one that really knows about Loomis wanting to off this girl is Meeker. Meeker's not around, so Rachel thinks nothing of it because Loomis did his damnedest the rest of that night to look after the both of those two. And Tom, in the meanwhile, he's probably trying to figure out why he got into this situation in the first place and how did he pick this chick, of all chicks, to run off with into the night. So after locking Jamie in a lodge, Loomis pulls a hypodermic needle full of cyanide from his jacket with the intention of injecting Jamie and putting an end to this whole thing. He delivers one of those famous Loomis-style monologues before everything, and I mean everything, starts to get really fucking weird. But a psychic storm descends upon that lodge in that moment, with many evil versions of Jamie appearing to Loomis. Furniture flies, windows explode. Jamie begs the evil twins of hers not to hurt this man, who in that moment is trying to inject her with poison. Now, eventually they all go away because Jamie stands up to them. Maybe we're getting some sort of a message there. If you stand up to your bully and you scream in the face of evil, it'll all flutter away. It works in this case, and Loomis embraces a sobbing Jamie. She runs into his arms, and it's a beautiful moment the way it's written out, and crazy old kook Loomis realizes that this little girl needs to be saved because the evil around her and within her is not her fault. Meeker, on the other hand, is tired of this holiday. He's tired of this bullshit, and Loomis's back and forth is driving him nuts, so he just decides, I'm going to arrest Jamie right now, hold her at a highway substation, because, you got to remember that sheriff's station of his is in real bad shape. But ultimately, the first half of this script really started, it was really working for me. There's a lot of rinse repeat stuff, and we'll talk about the projections and the craziness, But again, Michael tracks her down and kills the cops looking over her, only for Jamie and Rachel and Tom, yet again, to escape. And eventually, they all go back to this farm party where Michael shows up, kills everybody at the party, and reading this, because listen, I'm a Rachel guy, okay? So I think Rachel is gorgeous. She's phenomenal. She's perfect in these movies, which is probably why the real Halloween 5 pissed me off as much as it did. But I'm reading this and I'm thinking Tom is one hard up cat, because no woman, and Rachel is amazing, but no woman I've seen in a slasher film is worth all this. Maybe I'm wrong. It's happened before. Then we get a scene where Loomis and Michael are in close proximity to one another, struggle, good versus evil, and Loomis is looking to inject that cyanide into Michael, but our killer then decides he's going to project several versions of himself surrounding Loomis. Now this confuses the weathered old physician, as it confused me as I read the words off the page. And he starts to unmask each one of these projections to find the right one to inject, because the right one is going to allow him to just stab them with a needle, right? It's just going to happen. Angry, not wanting to be unmasked, and probably sick of the do-si-do that they do every single Halloween, Michael steps forward, snaps the neck of Loomis, and presumably kills one of the greatest horror movie characters of all time, portrayed by one of the best actors of all time. I read that and I got a little pissed off. And I know he was supposed to die in the version that we got, and they brought him back for 6, and I appreciated that. It just sucks. The idea of him dying just blows. That's my opinion. I'm attached to Loomis almost as much as I'm attached to Rachel. Way different reasons, but Loomis is legit. So the chase resumes, because why wouldn't it? And Rachel is stabbed before Jamie stands up to her uncle, declaring, "I'm not afraid of you," and then physically projects knives that burst through Michael's body. Sigh. And then Jamie unmasks her uncle, and we see the face of a little boy. Double sigh. Now the first responders end up showing up and see that the shape is not dead, but he's actually fallen back into a coma, much like the state that we saw him in coming out of Halloween 2 and going into Halloween 4. Rachel goes off to the hospital. Jamie is given a lift back by Tom, only to see Tom's truck, crash into a tree that just kind of appears. And when the camera moves into the cab of the truck, we see a screwdriver buried into the temple of Tom, and then we see a shot of Jamie walking back alone toward town. Tom really did all of that and got no action. Nada. Hashtag justice for Tom. My immediate reaction is that this had some promise. The inclusion of cornfields, farms, Halloween parties, old churches. It feels very Midwest in the fall, and that's coming from a guy who has survived many Midwests in the fall. So I love how they created the atmosphere for this movie, or how you read it on the page. They do a pretty good job to a point of building off of the amazing way that Halloween 4 ended. Being able to see that immediate aftermath of the attack would have been amazing. We saw the change in Loomis at the end of the film, but learning where we go after that, I think, had some meat to it. I think they were on the right track there. Not surprisingly, it's the psychic storms, the evil projections, all that sort of stuff that lose me. And to be fair, maybe Halloween needs some of that, because I always, from a fan's point of view, thought that John Carpenter wanted some sort of supernatural mysticism from Michael to help separate him from Jason Voorhees and, to an extent, Freddy Krueger, which is interesting because that made Carpenter, at one point, he wanted no explanation from Michael. And now he just wants the most outlandish explanations for why Michael is the way he is, with some of the scripts that he wanted to see come to life on the big screen. So he's allowed to change his mind. Happens all the time. My wife changes her mind all the time. Every 5 seconds, it's a thing. It's a real thing. So he's allowed to have 1 or 2 in his lifetime. He created the shit. He can do whatever he wants. But just my rambling 2 cents. And I love that Rachel, Loomis, Jamie, and even Meeker made it back for this film. I hate that they kill Loomis because, as I mentioned before, he's one of my all-time favorites across any genre, but you knew with his age and with just sooner or later, if you keep tempting fate and you're going up against one of the all-time serial killers, you're going to run out of luck. And fuck, I mean, if he survived a raging, firing inferno at Haddonfield Memorial, maybe he could survive this little crick in the neck. I mean, you never know. Anything's possible with these horror films. And I always find it really interesting to read through these almost made scripts to sort of see what they wind up eventually cherry picking for the movies that they do put out in the big screen. Tower Farm Party is a perfect example, because in the movie that we got, it's the party that Tina just had to go to amidst all that chaos and turmoil that Jamie was going through. And in this version, it's the spot Rachel runs to for help and meets this Tom guy who ultimately dies trying to save her honor. Now, Mustafa Akkad wound up being good with all of this, and that's always the biggest hurdle to getting a movie made. But eventual director Dominique Othenon Girard, I think that's how you say his name, famously threw this script in the trash, or this treatment. I don't think it was a full script, but he threw it in the trash in the office of Akkad and talked him into going another way. Now, Girard thought it was too action-packed and supernatural, so instead he decided to give the shape a mask that made him look like Nicolas Cage, tattoo him, and give him a handler with matching ink and a submachine gun. Fucking hell, man. In reading through Taking Shape 2 again, I realized that this was really the only treatment for Halloween 5, apart from the one that wound up making it to the big screen, and I'm assuming that had something to do with that tight turnaround from 1988 to 1989, and I'm certain that most people that saw Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, knew that that small window that they were presented with was a big part, if not the complete entirety of the reason why it sucked so goddamn bad. I gotta give them a little bit of grace, though. I have to give him just the slightest bit, because I had no idea that they tried to get Dwight Littleback after he just killed it with Halloween 4. I didn't know they tried to bring him back to the next project. So I'll give him a little bit of a handicap. I'll give him a little margin of error. But just think, we have not even gotten close. We haven't even scratched the surface on some of the craziest, most batshit insane ideas for a Michael Myers adventure just yet. That'll be coming up real soon. So if you're able to, tune back in next Saturday where we talk about more of the almost Halloween sequels.